My mother, Helen, pointed a trembling finger at my son and shrieked, "Your kid took the missing $10,000 from the safe." My sister Mabel chimed in, "We saw him near it." My son Harry looked terrified, but I said nothing. I just dropped the security footage drive on the table. 5 minutes later, my brother-in-law Connor's face turned white. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The diagnosis was still ringing in my ears, a high-pitched whine of terrifying words like aggressive and immediate. I was sitting at my own kitchen table, the specialist's brochure still in my hand, when my mother, Helen, called. Her voice wasn't warm. It wasn't concerned. It was, as always, sharp and demanding. "Ava, you need to be here. Sunday, 5 o'clock sharp. And I mean sharp," she'd said, clipping the words. "Connor and Mabel have an announcement." I was sick, not just a cold, but the kind of deep cellular sickness that makes you reevaluate every choice you've ever made. I was a 47-year-old single mother, a successful IT project manager, and I had just been told I was in for the fight of my life. I didn't want to go to a family dinner. I wanted to curl up with my 15-year-old son, Harry, and hold him until the world stopped spinning. But in our family, a summons from Helen wasn't a request. It was a command. So here I was, 2 days later, sitting in my mother's oppressively formal living room. The air was thick with the smell of her expensive potpourri and the sound of my sister Mabel's grating laugh. I clutched my stomach, a dull ache radiating from beneath my ribs. I'd told no one. Not yet. I didn't want the pity, and I certainly didn't want the performance of concern I knew I'd get from my mother and sister. The announcement was predictable. Mabel and her husband, Connor, had just put an offer on a ridiculously oversized vacation home. Connor, a restaurant manager who always seemed to be flashing more cash than his job should allow, was holding court by the fireplace. "It's a real gem," Connor boasted, swirling a glass of whiskey. "6 bedrooms, right on the water. You and Harry should come up sometime, Ava. If you can get away from work, that is." The jab was subtle as always. I was the career woman, while Mabel, a part-time real estate agent, was the devoted wife. Then it happened. My mother, Helen, emerged from her study, her face pale and pinched. "The safe," she said, her voice quiet at first. "The safe is open." A silence fell over the room. "What?" Mabel asked, her smile fading. "The cash," Helen said, her voice rising to a frantic pitch. "The $10,000 I took out for the roof deposit. It's gone." Everyone froze. Helen's eyes, cold and assessing, scanned the room. They passed over Mabel, over Connor, and landed, with sickening precision, on my son. Harry was sitting on the ottoman, headphones on, completely oblivious as he scrolled through his phone. "Harry," Helen snapped. Harry looked up, startled, and pulled his headphones down. "What?" "Where were you?" Helen demanded. "What do you mean? I've been right here," Harry said, his brow furrowing in confusion. "No, you weren't," my sister Mabel interjected, stepping beside our mother. "I saw you, about an hour ago. You were standing right outside the study. Weren't you, Connor?" Connor, looking uncomfortable, cleared his throat. "Yeah, I did see him down that end of the hall, near the door." My blood ran cold. I saw the trap springing before Harry even understood the question. I was just looking for the bathroom," Harry stammered, his cheeks flushing red. He was a quiet kid, painfully shy, and this sudden, hostile attention made him shrink. "The bathroom is the other way." Helen's voice was a full-on shriek now. She marched over to my son and pointed a trembling, accusatory finger right in his face. You were always a sneaky child. You took it. Your kid took the missing $10,000 from the safe." Mabel nodded eagerly, her eyes glinting. "We saw him near it, Mom. He was the only one." Harry looked like he'd been struck. His eyes, wide with terror and disbelief, flew to mine. He was pleading. "Mom, I swear I didn't." My own illness, the pain, the fear, it all evaporated, replaced by a white-hot, protective rage. I looked at my mother's furious face, my sister's smug one, and my brother-in-law's suddenly shifty gaze. They had done this his whole life, marked him as the outsider, the problem. Simply because he was quiet, simply because he was my son. I stood up slowly, the room silent except for Harry's panicked breathing. The betrayal was worse than the diagnosis itself. The moments that followed were a blur of coordinated cruelty. Helen and Mabel operated like a practice team, their words overlapping to build a case against a terrified 15-year-old. "You've been asking for money, haven't you?" Mabel accused, crossing her arms. "For that new computer game you wanted. Ava said no, so you decided to just take it." "I did not," Harry cried, his voice breaking. He was on his feet now, backing away from them. "I was just looking for the bathroom. I got turned around." "A likely story," Helen scoffed. "You know perfectly well where the bathroom is, Harry. You've been in this house since you were born. You went into my study, you saw the safe was unlocked, and you took my money." It was a lie. The safe was never unlocked. My mother treated that safe like a holy relic. This was a character assassination, plain and simple. I felt a cold, dreadful calm settle over me. The pain in my side was a dull throb, a physical reminder of the real battle I was facing, but this was a sickness of a different kind. I watched my sister, Mabel, a woman I once shared a childhood with, put her arm around our mother. "Mom, don't worry, we'll get it back. We should call the police. Right now." "Yes," Helen agreed, nodding sharply. "Let them search his room, search his bag." "No," Harry yelled, tears of sheer frustration and fear now streaming down his face. "Mom, do something, tell them." I looked at my son, his face crumbling, and then at the predators who called themselves my family. My gaze then shifted to Connor. He was the only one who was quiet. He stood near the fireplace, his drink in his hand, his knuckles white. He was staring intently at the floor, his expression unreadable. He wouldn't meet my eyes. I took a deep, steadying breath. "That's enough," I said. My voice was quiet, but it cut through the hysteria like a razor. Helen, Mabel, and Harry all turned to look at me. "Ava, don't you dare defend him," Helen spat. "I know it's hard to admit your son is a thief, but the evidence is." "What evidence?" I asked, my voice still level. "That he was near a room, that's your entire case." "He was the only one, Ava," Mabel snapped. "It's obvious, just look at him. He's terrified because he got caught." "He's terrified because 3 adults are screaming at him," I retorted. I turned to my son. "Harry, go to the car, now." "He is not leaving this house," Helen shrieked. "He is," I said, locking eyes with my mother. "He's going to the car, and then you and I are going to have a talk." "I'm calling the police." "Go ahead," I said. "Call them. It will make what happens next even more interesting." The absolute certainty in my voice gave Helen a moment's pause. She faltered, her hand hovering over the phone. Harry, seizing his chance, grabbed his backpack and bolted out the front door, slamming it behind him. Now it was just us, the 4 adults. "How dare you?" Helen began, her voice low and furious. "You let him run." "He didn't run," I said, walking slowly toward the center of the room. "I sent him away to protect him from you." I looked from my mother to my sister. "You've wanted this for years, haven't you? A reason, any reason to prove that I'm a failure, that my son is a delinquent, that your perfect lives are so much better." "This isn't about you, Ava," Mabel said, rolling her eyes. "This is about your son's thievery. He's clearly got problems." "Yes, he does," I agreed softly. "His problems are his grandmother and his aunt, but you all seem to have forgotten one crucial thing." I paused, letting the silence stretch. Connor looked up, his face slick with a thin sheen of sweat. "What are you talking about, Ava?" he asked, his voice strained. "I'm talking about the study, Connor," I said, my eyes fixed on him. "And the little upgrade I installed for Mom about 6 months ago." Mabel looked confused. "What upgrade? The new Wi-Fi?" I almost smiled. "No, not the Wi-Fi." I looked at my mother, who was now watching me with a dawning look of uncertainty. She was finally remembering. "The camera," she whispered. The security camera, I confirmed. The one you begged me to install after you were convinced the cleaning lady was stealing your silver. The one you wanted to keep an eye on things. I reached into my purse and pulled out a small, black USB flash drive. The one that uploads 24/7 footage directly to a cloud server. My cloud server. Mabel's smug expression vanished. Helen's face went from pale to ashen, but it was Connor's reaction that told the whole story. He didn't just look pale, he looked green. But it's not on, Helen stammered. The little red light isn't on. Of course it's not, I said, my professional calm fully intact. It's a discreet camera, Mom, that's the point. I turned the indicator light off from my laptop the day I installed it, but I assure you it's been on. It's been on all day. I walked over to the large smart TV mounted above the fireplace. You know, the wonderful thing about being an IT manager, I said, my back to them as I plugged the drive into the USB port, is that I'm very, very good at managing data. When you first screamed, I locked my phone, logged into the server, found the correct time-stamped file, and downloaded it. It only took about 30 seconds. Ava, this is ridiculous, Mabel tried, her voice wavering. We know what we saw. No, I said, picking up the TV remote. You saw what you wanted to see, but I'm about to show you what actually happened. I turned to face them, the remote in my hand. So, shall we watch? For a moment, nobody moved. The only sound was the faint hum of the television. Helen and Mabel were frozen, their faces a mask of disbelief and, for the first time, apprehension. Connor looked like a man about to face a firing squad. He hadn't moved an inch, but his hand was shaking so badly that his whiskey sloshed over the rim of the glass. This is an invasion of privacy, Mabel suddenly declared, finding her voice. You can't just film people in Mom's house. She's right, Helen chimed in, grabbing at the straw. I never agreed to this, Ava. I wanted it for security, not to spy on my own family. You begged me for it, I stated flatly. You signed into my Amazon account to approve the purchase. You were sitting right next to me when I configured the cloud storage. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I have the emails, Mom, the ones where you specifically asked, can you make sure it's hidden? But that doesn't even matter. Right now, my son is sitting in my car, crying because you accused him of being a grand larcenist. This, I held up the remote, is his defense. I've spent my life being the other daughter. Helen had me young, and I was always a reminder of her lost youth. I was the quiet, bookish, independent one. Mabel, born 3 years later, was her do-over. Mabel was the bubbly, popular, pretty one who married a successful man and did everything right. I was the one who had a child on my own, who built a demanding career, and who never seemed to need my mother's approval. And she hated me for it. She hated that I was an executive in a field she didn't understand. She hated that I owned my own home, managed my own finances, and had raised a kind, intelligent son without her input. My son, Harry, was just an extension of me, a quiet, thoughtful, tech-savvy kid she couldn't comprehend. He was, therefore, sneaky. He was troubled. Mabel, on the other hand, was a mess. Her real estate career was a hobby funded by her husband. And Connor was the antagonist I'd never quite been able to name. He was all flash. The expensive watch, the leased luxury car, the constant talk of big deals and investor meetings. As a restaurant manager, even a high-end one, his lifestyle never quite added up. I'd always suspected he was a fraud, but I never had a reason to dig. He was always perfectly polite to me, but with a layer of condescension I found exhausting. He'd make comments about my little IT projects or ask me if I was ever going to take a vacation. He treated me like a stressed-out spinster, and I treated him like a bad smell. Now he was staring at the black screen of the TV as if it held the secrets of the universe. This is stupid, he finally said, attempting a laugh. It came out as a dry croak. We all know what happened. The kid was snooping. Just make him give the money back, Ava, and we can forget the whole thing. No police. Oh, we're long past that, Connor, I said, and I'm not interested in forgetting. I pressed the play button. The screen flickered to life. The camera's vantage point was from the corner of the bookshelf, high up, giving a clear, wide-angle view of the study. It covered the doorway, my mother's desk, and most importantly, the large, old-fashioned safe built into the wall behind it. The timestamp in the corner read 3:42 p.m. "See," Mabel said, pointing. "There's no one in there, it's just an empty room." "Be quiet and watch," I said. We watched in silence for nearly 2 minutes. The room was still. Then, at 3:44:17, a figure appeared in the doorway. It was my son, Harry. He paused, looked left, then right down the hallway, clearly disoriented. He was holding his phone. He took one step into the room, looked around, and then, realizing it was an office and not the bathroom, he backed out immediately and disappeared. He was on screen for less than 5 seconds. "Aha," Helen shouted. "There, he went in, I told you." "He looked in, Mom," I corrected, my eyes still on the screen. "He was looking for the bathroom, just like he said." "He could have gone back," Mabel insisted. "He didn't," I said. "I already watched the whole file, but you don't have to take my word for it." I hit the fast-forward button, scanning through the footage at 16x speed. People passed by the hallway, Mabel, my mother, but no one entered. We watched for what felt like an eternity, the sped-up footage making the day outside the window dim slightly. "This is pointless," Mabel whined. "He must have done it earlier." "Wait," I said, slowing the footage back to normal speed. The timestamp read 4:17 p.m. A new figure appeared in the doorway. This one didn't hesitate. It was my brother-in-law, Connor. He stepped quickly into the study, pulling the door almost shut behind him, leaving it just slightly ajar. He stood for a moment, listening. Then he walked directly to the safe. "What is he doing?" Helen whispered, her hand flying to her mouth. Mabel was silent, her eyes glued to the screen. We watched as Connor, his back partially to the camera, expertly spun the combination dial. Left, right, left. He pulled the heavy door open, reached inside, and pulled out the thick, white envelope of cash my mother had described. He didn't even count it. He just folded it and shoved it deep into the inside pocket of his suit jacket. He pushed the safe door shut, spun the dial to lock it, and then he hesitated. He stood there, his head bowed. He ran a hand through his hair, his whole body tense. He then walked to the desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out a letter opener. He went back to the safe, and for one horrifying second, I thought he was going to try to break the lock. Instead, he used the tip of the letter opener to scratch and jiggle the dial, as if trying to make it look tampered with. It was a clumsy, desperate, and, as I already knew, completely unnecessary act. He put the letter opener back, smoothed his jacket, and took one last look around the room. Then he walked to the door, peeked out into the hallway, and slipped out, pulling the door quietly shut behind him. The room was empty again. I pressed pause. I turned to face them. The silence in the room was absolute. Helen looked utterly bewildered. "But he knew the combination," she said, her voice a hollow shell. I never told him the combination." "No," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "You didn't, but you did write it down." Helen's eyes widened. "Where?" "On the back of that ridiculous, world's best grandma frame Mabel gave you 2 Christmases ago," I said. "The one you keep on your desk. I saw it when I was setting up your printer last month. I told you then, Mom, this is a terrible idea. You told me I was being paranoid." Mabel, who had been pale, was now bright red with fury. But she wasn't looking at me. She was staring at her husband. "Connor," she said, her voice a tiny, trembling thing. "Connor, what is that? What did you do?" Connor was completely, utterly still. His face was a mask of waxy, white terror. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. You stole from my mother?" Mabel's voice rose, cracking with hysteria. "You stole $10,000. "Mabel, baby, listen." He finally managed, holding up a shaking hand. "I can explain, it's not what it looks like." "It looks like you're a common thief," Helen shrieked, finding her voice. She lunged at him, beating her fists against his chest. "You stole from me. You tried to frame my grandson, you animal." "Get off me," Connor shouted, shoving her back. Helen stumbled and Mabel caught her. "And you," Mabel screamed, turning her rage on me. You sat there, you let us. You trapped us." "I did exactly what you did," I said, my blood like ice in my veins. I sat back and watched a crime unfold. The only difference is, I had the decency to wait for the proof before I accused anyone. I looked at Connor, who was backed against the fireplace, his eyes darting toward the door. "This wasn't your first time, was it, Connor? This was too smooth. You knew exactly where the safe was, you knew about the combination, you knew exactly where the cash was. You've been planning this." My IT brain, the part of me that runs projects, traces data, and finds anomalies, was fully engaged. This wasn't Jew. Sent a simple theft, this was a pattern. "You've been in that safe before, haven't you?" I pressed. "Mom, when was the last time you actually counted the cash in there?" Helen looked blank. I don't know, a few months ago, oh heavens." "You're drowning, aren't you, Connor?" I said, taking a step toward him. "The new house, the car, the watches, it's all a lie. You're in debt. Bad debt." "You don't know anything about me," he snarled. "I know you just stole $10,000 from a 72-year-old woman and tried to pin it on a 15-year-old boy," I said. "And I know that this flash drive holds a felony. So I'm going to ask you one time. Why?" "It's the restaurant," he stammered, his eyes wild. It's not doing well. We had a bad quarter. I just needed to float a payment. I was going to pay it back. I swear, Helen, I was going to pay it back before you even noticed." "By letting my son go to jail for it," I demanded. "No, I saw the kid by the door. I heard Mabel say it, and it happened," he pleaded. "Ava, please, don't do this. Think of Mabel, think of the family." "The family," I repeated, the word tasting like ash. "You mean the family that was ready to feed my child to the wolves to cover their own tracks. That family." I held up the flash drive. "This is the family meeting now, Connor, and you're about to be voted out." Mabel, who had been staring at her husband with a look of dawning horror, finally snapped. Her mind, quick to find a scapegoat, had found a new one. You lied to me," she whispered to Connor, her face crumpling. "The vacation home, the bonus you got last month, was that Mom's money too?" Connor's silence was his confession. "Oh my," Mabel staggered back, clutching her chest. How much have you taken?" "It's not like that," Connor insisted, his voice slimy with false sincerity. "Mabel, baby, it's just a gambling debt, a little bit of bad luck. I hit a bad streak, that's all. I was going to win it all back. I just needed a little more capital." "Gambling?" Helen's voice was a dead whisper. She looked at her daughter. "Your husband is a gambler." This was the final nail. In my mother's world, there was no greater sin. It was a disease of the weak, the immoral, the low class. Her perfect son-in-law, the man she constantly held up as my superior, was nothing but a common degenerate. I'm not," Connor stammered, but the lie died on his lips. The video was still paused on the screen, a monument to his guilt. "You brought this filth into my house," Helen said to Mabel, her voice trembling with a new, colder rage. "You married this thief." "I didn't know," Mabel shrieked, turning on her mother. "How was I supposed to know? You're the one who loved him so much. You're the one who was always saying, 'Why can't Ava find a man like Connor?'" "Don't you dare put this on me," Helen shot back. "I'm the victim here." "Are you?" I asked, and the room fell silent again. They both turned to me. "What is that supposed to mean?" Helen demanded. "You were the victim of a theft, yes," I said, my voice cold and steady. "But Harry was the victim of you. You were so blinded by your preference for Mabel, so desperate to see me fail that you were willing to believe my son, your own grandson, was a criminal based on nothing. You didn't even hesitate. You," I said, pointing at my mother, "were the judge. And you," I pointed at Mabel, "were the star witness. And you," I said to Connor, "you were more than happy to let an innocent kid take the fall for your pathetic crimes." I walked over to Connor. He flinched as I got close. I held out my hand. "The envelope," I said, "now." He looked at me, his eyes full of hate. "Or what? You'll call the cops? You'll humiliate your own sister." You think I care about that right now? I said. My only priority is in that car. You have 5 seconds before I walk out that door and give this footage to the first police officer I see. And trust me, as an IT professional, I can assure you that file is backed up in 3 different off-site locations. You can't destroy the evidence. His bravado crumbled. With a shaking hand, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the thick, white envelope. He practically threw it at me. I took it, walked over to my mother, and dropped it on the coffee table in front of her. There's your money. Helen just stared at it, as if it were a snake. Ava, Mabel whimpered, her entire world collapsing. Ava, please, don't tell anyone. This will ruin us. It will ruin me. And what about my son? I asked, turning to face her. What about the ruin you were so eager to heap on him 30 minutes ago? What about the call to the police? What about searching his room? You were willing to brand a 15-year-old boy as a thief, Mabel. You didn't care about ruining his life. Why should I care about yours? Because. See, we're family, she cried. No, I said, shaking my head. We're not anymore. You, Mom. You two made that very clear today. You're a club, and Harry and I have never been welcome. I walked to the front door and picked up my purse. I'm going to go get my son. We're going to go home, and he's going to have nightmares about this. About his own grandmother and aunt trying to have him arrested. I turned back, my hand on the doorknob. I'm not going to call the police, Connor. A tiny flicker of relief passed over his face. You are, I said. No, wait, that's not right either. I looked at Helen. You are, Mom. You're the victim. You're going to pick up that phone and you're going to report your son-in-law for theft. Or, you can handle it. I don't really care which. But what I am going to do is email a copy of this file to my lawyer, just for safekeeping. In case anyone ever breathes a word of this lie about my son again. Mabel burst into loud, ugly sobs. Helen just sat on the couch, rigid, staring at the envelope. Connor was breathing hard, trapped. Goodbye, Mom. Goodbye, Mabel, I said. I opened the door and walked out, not looking back. The betrayal I felt was so profound, so complete, that it had burned away all the grief, all the fear, even the physical pain from my illness. All that was left was a cold, clean certainty. I was done. I got in the car. Harry was huddled in the passenger seat, his knees drawn up, his face pale. He looked up as I closed the door, his eyes red-rimmed. Did they find it? He whispered. I started the car and put my hand on his knee. I found it. And no, you're not in trouble. It wasn't you, honey. It was never you. Then who? Connor, I said. Harry's eyes widened. Uncle Connor, but why did they blame me? I pulled out of the driveway, not even looking at the house in the rearview mirror. Because it was easier, I said, the words heavy and bitter. It was easier for them to believe you were a bad kid than to believe their perfect life was a lie. I drove us home in silence, my mind racing. The confrontation was over, but the war was just beginning. I knew my family. This wouldn't be the end. Mabel's humiliation would curdle into resentment, and my mother's shame would curdle into rage. They would find a way to spin this. They would find a way to make me the villain. The text messages started before we even got home. The first was from Mabel. You've destroyed my life. I hope you're happy. The second was from my mother. Connor is handling it. We are not discussing this again. I expect you to delete that video. I laughed, a short, harsh bark. Delete it, of course. They didn't care about the crime, only the evidence. They were already in damage control. They were going to sweep it under the rug, and Connor would face 0 consequences. He would handle it by promising to pay Helen back, and in a month they would all be back to Sunday dinners, pretending it never happened. And I would be the cruel, unhinged sister who set Connor up and attacked the family. My professional instincts, the part of me that managed multi-million-dollar projects and anticipated every possible point of failure, took over. This wasn't a family dispute anymore. It was a risk assessment. Connor was a gambler, a thief, and a liar. He was a liability, and he was still married to my sister. When I got home, I sent Harry to his room with a pizza and told him to lock his door and play the loudest video game he owned. Then I went to my home office, shut the door, and got to work. I wasn't just an IT manager. My specialty was cybersecurity and digital forensics. My family's ignorance of my actual job had always been a source of annoyance. Tonight, it was a weapon. I still had the admin credentials for my mother's Wi-Fi network, the one I'd set up for her. I logged in, I checked the device history, and I found what I was looking for. Connor's phone, Connor's laptop. He was constantly on her network. It was legally and morally a gray area. I knew that. But as I sat there, the dull throb in my side reminding me of my own mortality, I decided I didn't care. He had tried to sacrifice my son. I was going to sacrifice him. I didn't need to hack him. I just needed to investigate him. I started with public records, restaurant supplier liens, credit reports, which are surprisingly easy to access if you have enough personal information, all of which I had. And then, the dark corners of the internet. I knew the names of the most popular online gambling sites. It wasn't hard. It took me less than 2 hours to paint a picture that was far, far worse than I'd imagined. He wasn't just in a little debt. He was drowning. He had liens against the restaurant's equipment. He had maxed out multiple high-interest credit cards. He had even taken out a predatory payday loan online, one that was clearly in default. He wasn't just stealing $10,000 for a bad streak. He was stealing to stop the walls from caving in. But the worst part? The restaurant he managed wasn't just his. I did a quick business search. He was a partner. The other partner? My sister, Mabel. Her name was on the LLC filing. Her name was on the loans. He wasn't just ruining himself. He was dragging my sister down with him, and she was either too naive or too willfully blind to see it. The anger I'd felt before was nothing compared to this. This was a new, cold fury. He was destroying her. I picked up my phone and called Mabel. She answered on the first ring, her voice thick with tears. "What do you want, Ava? Come to gloat some more." "Shut up and listen to me," I said, my voice all business. "Are you with Connor?" "No," she sniffed. He went for a drive. He said he needed to think." "Of course he did," I muttered. "Mabel, I need you to listen to me very, very carefully. You are in danger, not physical danger. Financial, you're going to be ruined." "What are you talking about, Mom? Mom is handling it. She's giving him a loan to pay back the debt. He's going to get help." I almost choked. A loan? She's giving him more money? This was worse than I thought. My mother wasn't just sweeping it under the rug. She was enabling him to protect the family's image. "Mabel, he's not just in a little debt. He's a gambling addict and he's been robbing you blind. The restaurant? Your name is on it, isn't it?" There was a dead silence on the other end. How did you know that?" "Because I'm not an idiot," I snapped. "I just ran a public records search. Your name is on the business license. Your name is on the supplier liens. He owes over $80,000, Mabel, and that's just what I can find online. The $10,000 he stole from Mom, that was a drop in the bucket. He's going to take you down with him." "No," she whispered. "No, he wouldn't. He just tried to frame your 15-year-old nephew, Mabel. What part of 'he has no morals' are you not understanding? He is using you. He's probably been using you for years." She was quiet, the only sound her hitched breathing. The fantasy of her perfect life was dying, and the reality was too horrific for her to accept. I have to go," she said and hung up. I sat back, my heart pounding. I had presented the irrefutable proof. I had laid out the facts. Just like in the living room, I had shown her the truth. But this time, the antagonist wasn't just Connor. It was Mabel's own denial. I knew she wouldn't believe me. Not yet. She would go to Connor. She would accuse him. He would lie. He would charm her, cry, beg, and manipulate her. And she would choose to believe him because the alternative was too terrible. The spell wasn't broken. Not yet. I needed one more thing, something final, something that even Mabel couldn't deny, and I knew exactly where to find it. I didn't sleep. The pain in my side had sharpened to a burning blade, a constant reminder of the other battle I was supposed to be fighting. But I couldn't stop. All night, I dug. I used my knowledge of data recovery and social engineering not to break laws, but to find the public breadcrumbs Connor had left behind. I found his profiles on forums, his panicked posts on gambling subreddits under a barely disguised username, his Venmo transactions, many of which were public, all painting a portrait of a man in a full-blown, catastrophic spiral. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place at 4 a.m. I found a public legal filing, a lien on their house, not the vacation home they were buying, but their primary residence. It had been filed 3 weeks ago. He hadn't just been stealing from my mother. He'd been lying to my sister about the very roof over her head. I saved everything. I compiled it into a single, password-protected PDF. I emailed it to my lawyer, my personal account, and finally to my mother and my sister. The subject line was simple: the truth. Then I waited. The call came at 7 a.m. It was Helen. Her voice was unrecognizable. It was small, and it was terrified. "Ava," she whispered. "Ava, what is this?" "It's Connor's financial history, Mom," I said, exhausted. It's all true, the house." "Yes." He's at the restaurant," she said. "Mabel went there this morning, to confront him. She's not answering her phone. Ava, I'm scared. He's desperate." My blood went cold. She was right. A man that far gone, he was unpredictable. "I'm on my way," I said. I drove, my hands shaking. I called my lawyer. "I sent you a file," I said. "If you don't hear from me in 1 hour, send it to the police. No, don't ask questions, just do it." I pulled up to the restaurant. It was a high-end bistro in a nice part of town. My mother's car was parked haphazardly by the curb. I went to the front door. It was locked. I ran around to the back, to the delivery entrance. The metal door was propped open with a milk crate. I slipped inside into the dim, stainless steel kitchen. It was empty. The only sound was the hum of the industrial refrigerators. And then I heard it, shouting, from the main dining room. I pushed through the swinging doors. The scene was pure chaos. Mabel was standing by a table, her face streaked with tears, a stack of papers scattered at her feet. Helen was backed against the bar, her phone clutched in her hand. And Connor was on his knees. He was holding onto Mabel's arm, his face a mask of desperate, sobbing theatricality. "Baby, I can fix it, I swear," he was crying. "It was just a bad run. We can refinance. Don't listen to her. She's trying to destroy us. She's jealous." "Jealous?" Mabel shrieked, her voice raw. "Jealous of what? That our house is in foreclosure, that you stole $80,000, that you tried to send my nephew to jail to cover your tracks." "It wasn't like that." "It was exactly like that," she screamed, finally, decisively breaking free. She ripped her arm from his grasp. "You are a liar. You are a monster. You used me. You used my mother." "Mabe." Helen said, her voice shaking. I've called the police." Connor's head snapped up. His face changed. The desperate, pleading mask melted away, replaced by a pure, animalistic rage. "You what?" he snarled, getting to his feet. He advanced on my mother. You you've ruined me." He raised his hand. "Get away from her," I shouted. All three of them turned. I was standing by the kitchen door, my phone in my hand, recording. "Ava," Connor breathed, his face draining of all color. He knew in that instant that he was completely and utterly trapped. The video, the documents, the police, there was no one left to lie to. Mabel looked at me, her expression not one of gratitude, but of complete, hollow devastation. The truth, in all its ugly finality, was here. And then, in that moment of perfect, terrible silence, we all heard it. The sound of sirens growing closer. Connor didn't run. He didn't fight. He just stood there in the middle of the empty dining room, a ruined man. He looked at me, his eyes filled with a venom so pure it was almost impressive. "You," he whispered, "this was all you." "No, Connor," I said, lowering my phone. "This was all you." The police officers came through the front door, the same one Connor had locked to trap his family inside. Helen, in a surprising show of strength, pointed a trembling finger. "That man," she said, her voice clear. "He stole $10,000 from my safe, and he's stolen everything from my daughter." As they put the cuffs on him, as they read him his rights, Connor's eyes never left mine. Mabel finally collapsed, sinking into a chair, her sobs echoing in the empty restaurant. My mother, for the first time in my entire life, walked over to me. She didn't hug me. She didn't apologize. She just stood beside me, watching as the man she had so admired was led away. You'll delete the video now," she said. "It wasn't a question." I looked at her, the matriarch, so used to giving orders. "No," I said, "it's evidence." I turned and walked back through the kitchen, out into the bright morning sun, and took my first clean breath in days. The downfall was as swift as it was total. Connor, facing irrefutable video and financial evidence, had no choice but to plead guilty. The $10,000 theft from my mother was just the tip of the iceberg. Once the police were involved, other creditors, other victims of his borrowing, came out of the woodwork. He was charged with grand theft, multiple counts of fraud, and embezzlement from the restaurant he and Mabel co-owned. He was sentenced to 5 years in state prison. Mabel was a ghost. She lost everything. The house was seized by the bank. The restaurant was liquidated to pay off a fraction of the debts. She was forced to declare bankruptcy and, at 44 years old, moved back into our mother's house, into her childhood bedroom. I didn't see her for months. The first time I did was at my lawyer's office. I was there to update my will, a grim task made necessary by my diagnosis. When I walked out, Mabel was sitting in the lobby. She looked small and tired. She stood up when she saw me. "Ava." "Mabel," I said, my voice neutral. I'm working," she said, gesturing vaguely at the desk. "As a receptionist, here." "Oh," I said, "it was a fall, a hard one." I wanted to say, "Thank you," she whispered, her eyes fixed on the carpet. If you hadn't done what you did, I don't know where I'd be, probably in prison with him." "You would have lost everything anyway, Mabel," I said, not unkindly. "I just made it happen faster." "No," she said, finally meeting my eyes. You saved me and you saved Harry." She took a shaky breath. "And I'm so sorry, Ava, for everything, for all of it, ever." It wasn't a full apology, not for a lifetime of small cuts, but it was a start. I just nodded. "Take care of yourself, Mabel." My relationship with my mother was different. It was colder, but cleaner. The pretense was gone. She still lived in her big, quiet house, but the safe was gone, removed from the wall. She treated me with a new, wary respect. She called me to ask for my opinion on things, financial things, legal things. And she doted on Harry. She sent him gift cards, she asked about his classes, she told him she was proud of him. It was a clumsy, awkward attempt at atonement, but it was an attempt nonetheless. As for me, I had my own battle. I'd started treatment the week after Connor's arrest. It was brutal. It was draining, but I wasn't fighting alone. Harry was by my side, making me tea, sitting with me as I recovered. And in a strange twist, Mabel started to call. And then to visit. She'd sit with me, quietly reading a magazine, and when I woke up, she'd have a glass of water ready. We didn't talk about the past. We didn't need to. We just were. One afternoon, about a year after it all happened, I was sitting on my porch. My treatment was over and my prognosis was good. I was in remission. Harry was in the yard, laughing with friends. My mother and Mabel were due to arrive any minute for a quiet, simple Sunday dinner. My house, my rules. My phone buzzed. It was a notification from my cloud server. The video file from that day, the one I had saved, was set to be automatically deleted. My 1-year retention policy had expired. I looked at the prompt, permanently delete file, study footage final. I thought about the betrayal, I thought about the rage, and I thought about the quiet, broken family that was slowly, painfully, stitching itself back together. I hit delete, and for the first time, I let it go.